Welcome. It's August 23rd. It's a continuation from our Football Friday show, part one. We're going into part two. Bobby, Pete, and myself talk about the coaching staff, the defense, what to expect, the overall team vibes. And don't forget, if you watch this show, comment on the show to be entered into the sweepstakes to get the first game tickets for the Merrimack home opener September 7th at the Rent. You don't want to miss it. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to thank you guys for your continued support. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your YouTube screen. Click it. Follow the podcast on all your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever. Your subscriptions, likes, comments really help us grow and continue to bring you the best UConn content out there. We appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. The Ultimate College Football HC Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free and has no ads and 100% playable offline. Use the promo code Locked On College Football, Locked On CFB, all caps inside the game store to receive a free boost to your game. Begin your coaching legacy today. Remember, this is a continuation of our Football Friday conversation from last week. So Bobby, Pete, myself, from the boys from the TNT College Football Podcast, join me for another segment, 3 segments, coaching staff, what to expect from the defense, overall team vibes. Make sure that you are entered into the subscription for the home opener against Merrimack, September 7th. We have 2 tickets. I got the parking passes for you guys. If you enter into this competition, you automatically get entered into every other giveaway that we have. That includes college basketball, which means the men's and women's tickets that we will have available for this upcoming season. So enjoy College Football Friday, part 2. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn's Football Friday with Pete and Bobby. Guys, I'll be honest with you, man. The first thing that always comes to mind when I hear the word Jim Mora is playoffs. Because of his dad and that great commercial that they just did. I think it was pretty recently. Give me more substance on Jim Mora Jr. Obviously, the guy has been a successful coach in the past. What do you love about what he's brought to UConn, and where do you feel like maybe he's, I want to say deficient, because coming in year 2? So I want to know from your perspective, positives and maybe one negative that you think from Jim, and what can we expect from this football program this year from a coaching perspective?
Well, with positives, he's obviously a good motivator and a good culture setter. I mean, the work that he did that first year he came here, I think you couldn't have asked for anything more as a UConn fan and as an alum like myself, for someone to turn it around from what it was. So in terms of, setting culture, he's very good at that. Motivation, he's very good at that. He being in his, 60s now and having the experience he has, I think, some of his successes and mistakes have molded his style to a point where he pretty much knows what direction to go, with just about every scenario with the team. And so that's very valuable, particularly in a circumstance such as UConn, that has up until recently not had great leadership in terms of directing the type of providing direction you need to have a top flight football program. One thing that's lost with a lot of people with the futility we had prior to him coming is that we had 6 university presidents, 4 ADs, and I think 4 or 5 coaches along that 15 years timeline. So it's hard to develop any football program at any level, whether it be college or high school, even junior high, if you don't have that kind of support and continuity within leadership. So with the establishment of Dave Benedict and him hiring more, I think it just took this long to just set the foundation needed to propel the program forward. And with that said, I think, especially with the NIL changes that have hit college football, I think he's doing a lot of positive things in order to set the foundation and propel it forward. As far as cons are concerned, maybe the only thing I would have said was maybe he tried to handle too much on his own plate in the beginning. And under normal circumstances, past circumstances, he might have been able to get away with it. But again, with the new changes in NIL and the transfer portal, it just got to be probably too much. But to his credit, he recognized that and made changes. So that's pretty much what I see.
Okay. Bobby, before you go, I just want to correct an error. I said second season. It's clearly his third season. But go ahead, Bobby. What do you see from Coach, the good and the bad, and give me your assessment.
I second Pete with the con aspect.
Okay.
With everything that's going on in the world of college athletics, it's just a lot to put on your plate to be the head coach, be the CEO of the program, and run the defense and do all that comes with all of everything that he was doing. So I second that. But again, like Pete said, he realized that he hired a really, really solid defensive coordinator, Coach Brock, and we're really excited about that. At least Pete and I are. The pros aspect, I mean, I look at it from the players that I talk to and just the excitement that they have every single day to go to football practice, to be around each other, that culture and camaraderie, the brotherhood that he's created with those guys. Just to see and hear all those guys, just again, how excited they are and how much fun they're having together. At the end of the day, I mean, it's a game. These are young college guys. They should be having fun with what they're doing. Yes, it has become a job with the aspect of NIL and the like. But at the end of the day, I personally enjoy seeing the guys really coming together as a brotherhood.
I will say one thing about job or otherwise. I played 1 year of college football. That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest job I've ever had. So, Pete, you played 4 years. I would imagine it's a pretty difficult deal for 4 years to be on a competitive football team. Yeah, I mean, listen, I hope these kids are having the time of their lives, but I would imagine it's even more intricate and even more time consuming when it comes to this stuff with NIL and everything that comes with it. I wanted to ask you both this question. I'm gonna direct it to Bobby first. Do you feel like with the success of the UConn basketball program, both the men's and women's, do you feel like Jim and his football staff feel pressure to get things going ramped up faster so that they can be that viable football program that I think most UConn fans look forward to? Because as you guys know, with college athletics, the Big East doesn't have football, but I think a lot of people would like for there to be kind of a unification of the athletic department in a conference. And I know UConn's an independent right now. So is there some of that pressure? Where do you end up seeing that going? So that's completely open-ended. Bobby, you go first, and then I'd love to hear Pete's take.
I don't think that Coach Mora feels pressure personally. I mean, he's coached in the NFL, he's coached in the NFC Championship. He expects to win. And I know he walked into a difficult situation, but that's who he is. He expects to win from the jump. So I personally don't think that he has felt or feels any of that pressure. I mean, yes, it's inevitably there because of the landscape of college athletics and the prominent role that football plays, because football is king, because that's where the majority of the money is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is that aspect. But if you're asking me if Coach Mora feels the pressure, I'm like, I personally don't think so, just because of the person that he is, for one, but then two, what he's been through in his professional career.
It's fair. Pete, what about you, man?
I would agree with Bobby. It's probably more of a positive pressure, something of a desire that he wants to fulfill in terms of, the standard he sets for himself. Like Bobby said, he's wired that way. And, you got to have a little what maybe some in the nutmeg state may consider a little crazy, take the job the way, he walked into it and think you can win. But, he's wired for that experience. And I think we're really blessed and really fortunate to have a guy, particularly with the NFL pedigree that he does have. It seemed to be a perfect fit to transition us into the type of program we needed to, especially with the change of times that we're experiencing right now. So, I think the pressure, the quote positive pressure, may be just in terms of, I think the whole athletic department in the nation is honestly waiting for what football is going to do. They know what we're doing everywhere else in the athletic department. And I think once we establish a solid footing, which I believe 100% we're going to do, we're probably going to start seeing some heavy courtship from different conferences to invite us in. But it's just a matter of, showing that we can be consistent. I think the staff that he put together in order to handle these new times, just the player personnel department that he developed to scout players and find these diamonds in the rough that he's been finding all spring, I think has been really, really impressive. And I think it should be really encouraging to the fan base to say, they're 100% in terms of, finding talent, funding it through the NIL and through the collectives. And, the next step is just producing on the field.
Yeah, honestly, guys, when you look at his staff, it's littered with guys who have coached in at the high major level. You guys mentioned Coach Brock as a defensive coordinator. You don't get to coach in the SEC unless you're a pretty talented guy. So, but let's steer it to the conference aspect of it before we get into the defensive side. And we'll talk about Coach Brock's defense here in a few moments. If you had your way, I want 2 questions. I'll go to Pete first. What is the viability that they need to be at, let's say over the next 2 years, to then start to field these offers from conferences? And what's a realistic option for UConn if a conference comes calling? What's their record need to be over the next couple of years? And which conference would you think is a fit for them going forward?
I think consistently going to bowl games is going to be a prerequisite. There's different tracks you can take. Bobby and I have talked about this in past shows. If you really want to make noise, make an impact, beat somebody you're not supposed to beat.
Sure.
Like, for instance, last year, if, we would have walked into Tennessee and beat them, it's an automatic, right? So, particularly with the Power 5 opponents that we have, it would help for us to own our own house, so to speak. So, beating Syracuse consistently, beating other teams in the prospective conferences that, we are supposed to be in, like the Dukes, if you're thinking ACC, that will help quite a bit. Showing up and, either beating those teams outright or being competitive, making it super close, that would help tremendously. But if you want to fast track it, just beat the teams you're not supposed to beat. If we walk in and beat Maryland week 1, that'll say something right away.
Yeah. What about you, Bobby? Yeah, it's a Big Ten team.
I agree with exactly what Pete said. That's something that him and I both are big on, is if you want to fast track it, beat somebody big. Like this year, we have Maryland, Duke, we have Wake Forest, we have Syracuse. Win 2-3 of those games, and we're that's pretty good. We're sitting in good shape there. And like Pete said, you need to consistently go to bowl games. That's going to be the first measuring stick that any of these conferences are going to look at. It's hard to say from the perspective of what conference we would potentially go to, just because of the ever-changing landscape of all these. Who knows what the ACC is going to look like? Who knows what the Big 12 is going to look like? You hear rumors all day, every day. It's hard to say.
Do you think this could ever be because I was not the first person to float this idea. I was shocked to hear that I had the same thought that Coach Krzyzewski had at Duke, which is what if a football program like their program, which is kind of, you mentioned them, Pete, or our football program says, all right, we want to join the big, I'll just say the Big 12, just for example. But the UConn men's and women's basketball are like, listen, we're deep rooted in the Big East, and this is a basketball conference. Is there an opportunity to split in that respect where the football team plays in a different conference? Because you guys we're an independent right now. So we're not attached to any of the so-called teams that UConn plays on a regular basis in men's and women's basketball or some of the non-generating sports or Olympic sports, if you will. Do you think that's an option, or do you think that's just like crazy talk? I don't care who answers. I'm just curious what you both think.
I'll go ahead and say, like, I know that the administration doesn't want to do that. They want everything to be all in one, all together. Because if we really wanted to, I mean, we could have joined the MAC for football, like UMass. I mean, I know UMass is going there for all sports, but the MAC would gladly take us for football if we wanted to go that route. But I know that's not something that we want to do.
But I'm thinking more aspirational. Like, I'm not just saying join a conference, join a conference. I'm saying Big 12, ACC reimagined, whatever. What do you think, Pete? Is it crazy talk to think that there could be a split where football? I mean, hell, there was a story the other day where Howard's trying to sell their college basketball team for $100 million. So I feel like anything is possible in college athletics right now.
It could be possible, but I think, from an administrative standpoint, for the UConn brand, I don't think it would be in their best interest right now, just because it'll be too much maintenance, too much micromanagement in terms of, trying to split not only, logistics in terms of, your top teams from the other teams, but also how you're going to negotiate it from a legal standpoint, which money goes where, which your teams generate. So it's kind of like those complexities that you got to manage as well. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, certain big conferences, other members may not be willing to share, certain monies if you don't have certain commitments in other athletic programs to make it worthwhile for them. So it's a bunch of complexities right there that you have to fight through in order to make that work. So I think their best bet right now is to, as a whole athletic department, just be successful, put a good viable product with the flagship programs they need to, and show success with, and move forward from there.
I like it. I'm curious what ends up happening in the future. I mean, I know a lot of us that are at least novices that are trying to get more into UConn football, especially with Coach Mora now. Are looking forward to quote unquote fast tracking this and figuring this all out. We're going to talk about Coach Brock's defense and the overall team vibes as we close up this 2-part Football Friday coming up after this. I want to take a moment to give a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you guys are going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game in simulation, you can step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of UConn football? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the game. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go, as you want, and when you want to. And of course, you have a special offer from Locked On UConn. Use the promo code Locked On College Football, Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. Hey, Husky fans, fall is right around the corner. You know what that means. College football is back, and I can't wait. There's nothing quite like the excitement of game day. In this season, we've got something special to help you gear up in style. I'm thrilled to announce that HomeField is the exclusive apparel sponsor of Locked On UConn. They're bringing you Can't Miss the Kickoff 2024 campaign. Now, if you haven't heard of HomeField yet, and I'd be surprised if you haven't, Let me fill you in. HomeField is a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis, known for their incredible, comfortable, officially licensed gear with over 180 colleges to choose from. So if you're not just interested in UConn football and you have a wife who went to Tennessee, you get her some Tennessee stuff like me. This August, HomeField is rolling out their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign, an absolute must-have for any college football fan. The highlight, their exclusive football boxes. These aren't just any boxes. 55 schools will get a box packed with 3 never-before-seen items, perfectly curated for the season ahead. I specifically wore this shirt to tell you this is a Fanatics shirt. I rarely wear Fanatics, but this one was too good of a color and scheme to pass up with the red and the blue. A lot of people have this shirt. Not a lot of people are going to have the HomeField stuff because it's a very exclusive. You have to sign up for it. There's a difference there. So if you're interested in having the latest apparel that not everybody can just go get on any website, HomeField apparel is for you. I've been rocking HomeField for a while now, so don't wait. Head over to homefieldapparel.com, browse through their wide selection, and get ready for the season with the best college gear there is. All right. They say defense wins championships, guys. I got a defensive back on the program. I got a former college basketball player on the program. Talk to me about the defense of this UConn. What can we expect? Like, I'll be 100% honest, guys. I don't even know if they run a 3-4 or a 4-3. Talk me through the real basics of this and what to expect from Matt Brock. Pete, you go first.
Well, they're changing their defensive philosophy. Coach Mora, who was traditionally a 4-3 defensive mind, who experimented with some 34 looks with our defense the last couple of years, has decided to turn the defense over to a guy that runs a 3-3-5.
Okay.
There's 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs, or 2 hybrid safeties, 1 free, and 2 corners. The thing I like a lot about the 3-3-5 is its versatility. It can change to a 4-man front. It can change to a 3-man front. You can blitz 8, you can blitz 4, or you can rush 4. And you can stem a whole bunch of looks off of it to create confusion along the defensive front, along the front 7. And if you get that system in the hands of someone who knows how to run it and who knows how to call it, it can create a lot of havoc with an offense. So we seem to have that guy in Coach Brock. It was, even it was at Mississippi State, which was like a middle of the pack SEC program, but still an SEC program.
Yep.
I think he generated the top, some of the 2 tacklers in the top 5 of that conference last year. And he seems to know how to call it and basically create havoc on an offense enough to keep teams in the game. And I think, especially with the personnel we're able to recruit, particularly along the front 7 or along the front line, we can get enough guys along the 3-man front to recruit and make it work, and get enough of those hybrid guys to fill in at linebackers in those safety spots to create plays on defense.
Before I go to Bobby, do you anticipate, and Bobby, you can answer this too, obviously, with that 3-3-5, is it always 3 people down, or is there like an amoeba look to it? Is there potentially some zone reads off of that, or is he playing more man on the back end from the DB perspective? Like what's that from that perspective? Because you said you can like stem off of it, blitz, play some games up front. Like, do you think he's really going to kind of play around with it and just kind of see what works?
Well, the guys they recruited, particularly in the defensive backfield, they recruited heavily in the defensive backfield, which is telling me they're going to go to multiple look defensive back type defenses, in order to combat a lot of the spread the offenses they're going to face this year. So I would not be surprised, particularly with the types of guys we have. They look like they're the type of guys they want to cover man to man, that they're going to try to pressure the quarterback. And in the 3-3-5, honestly, it doesn't do well to just sit back and do nothing. We've
right.
done the 3-3-5 at UConn before, and unfortunately people remember it because we were historically one of the worst defenses ever. But if you ever look back on the film, it's because we never blitzed out of it. They expected to play, 3 down linemen, read the gaps, and, expected to play defense. And you can't do that out of 3-3-5, especially if you're going to run it with the type of players that we traditionally kind of recruit. You have to pressure. You have to attack the offense.
What do you see, Bobby?
I mean, I agree with Pete. I mean, we recruited a lot of bigger DBs too, so that tells me that we're gonna try and be physical, and from the standpoint of mixing things up and throwing new things at different opponents. A lot of the opponents that we play run spread offenses this upcoming year, so it's gonna test us, obviously. And like Pete said, I know a lot of fans. I've been asked this a lot about the hesitancy of the 3-3-5 just because of the history UConn has with running it. And I always say what Pete says too is like, you got to look at it with what we were doing back then. We were just sitting back. We're not blitzing. We're not doing those things. And I completely expect that we will be doing all the things that we need to do to put our guys in the right place to have success.
I like it. This is a philosophical question from whether you're either playing or if you're watching a defense, because whenever I watch, no matter who I'm watching in college football or who I'm watching in the NFL, I would rather have an aggressive defense that gets beat over the top than be a defense that allows kind of dink and dunk and kind of like your bend but don't break, and then they eventually maybe score a touchdown anyway. Which is your philosophy? Obviously, you want to stop them no matter what. But which would you rather have, kind of that cover 2 defense or more of that press where we're kind of getting after the quarterback and being aggressive? Bobby, what's your style that you prefer just aesthetically when you're watching a game? Like nothing bothers me more than when I'm watching one of my teams and they're just getting beat down the field and it's like 7 yards here, 10 yards here, 4 yards, 6 yards. I'd much rather see an aggressive defense, and if you get beat over the top, so be it.
Well, this is going to be my basketball coaching background that comes out for me. Those who don't know, I coached at the college level for 10 or so years. And I ran a 40 minutes of hell-ish press. That's what I liked to do. So I was uber aggressive with my defenses. And so I'll translate it to the football side now and say, I would rather much more be aggressive than sitting back.
What about you, Pete?
Oh, definitely would rather attack than sit back. But I would add the caveat, it depends on, and this is, again, a big, huge topic of both Bobby and me, what you can operate, what you can execute. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you do. If you can't execute and you can't operate properly, if you have breakdowns, it's not going to be effective. So you have to make sure you have the personnel that can routinely make the routine operations routine, so that the big plays can be made and can happen. And so that's going to be the interesting part of how everything comes together with this defense. But I would definitely hope that they would go after people and attack.
Yeah, no, that was going to be my next question is like, do you obviously you have to have the personnel, like, injuries happen in football all the time. You could have all the best intentions, God forbid, a couple of your top guys go down and the plan was to attack. And then you kind of have to kind of give a little bit so that you're not getting blown out, right? So I totally understand that. You kind of have to work within the framework of what you have. Okay, I understand the thought process of both of you. Talking to a couple of madmen, I love it. Some aggressive guys, I love it. Talk to me about last topic, and we'll take about 5 minutes on this. What's the overall team vibe? I've heard you guys say about Mora being a culture builder. I've heard you guys talk about guys going out there and looking like they're having fun. Does he remind you of anybody? Is he like a Pete Carroll type, or is he kind of a mixture of that and maybe more of a disciplinarian? I'm just curious, like, what the vibes are. I only know what I know from Coach Mora, the clips I see, some of his past time at UCLA and then in the NFL. So give me a snapshot of like what this overall team vibe is. Bob, you go first. There's nothing like the thrill of live events, whether it's a concert, sports game, or a comedy show. I remember catching one epic game last year, and that energy is something you just can't miss. It was in Fenway Park, but it was a good game nonetheless. Now, with Game Time, getting tickets has never been easier. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you the only best deals or great seats. And don't forget to turn on the all-in pricing feature so you can see the total cost up front. No surprise fees. I recently used Game Time to grab tickets for an upcoming concert, And let me tell you, the deals were unreal, even for something like Zach Bryan, which was astronomically big. The app even shows you the view from your seat before you buy. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Game Time, last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Well, like I said earlier, just from talking to the guys, I mean, it's real positive. I mean, the guys are out there competing hard every day. And when we talked to Coach Baylock the other night on our show, he echoed those comments as well, saying like just the positive vibes that are going around and everything. Hopefully, I was always big looking at it from my coaching perspective that winning is contagious. So you're hoping that all the other programs that are very, very successful in our athletic department, those vibes all carry along to the football program, and I think they are. Like Coach Mora is doing the absolute best with what we have here. We have some talented players that are putting in a lot of work, and I think fans are going to be really, really excited about what they see this year.
Okay. Pete?
I'm hearing the same. I'm hearing there's a lot of focus amongst the players in terms of learning from their past experiences and putting it all together into the type of team and playing with the type of standards they want to play. I think everyone is, from what I'm hearing, geared toward, changing the trajectory of what UConn football is in terms of how they play and in terms of what kind of results they want to yield on the field. It's going to just all depend on, how they put everything together. I think with Coach Mora, usually the West Coast, kind of coaches are usually pretty good teachers. They're really good at setting culture and, creating a positive vibe. But he's also the son of a Marine. And so, when you have that kind of mindset, discipline is going to be part of it. Expectations in terms of, how to operate are going to be, paramount as well. So there's going to be that element there. And it's just going to be a matter of how that translates to the players. It could be tricky, with the amount of transfers that we have coming in. But so far, the reports we're getting is that everybody's on the same page and is focused on not focusing and not taking responsibility for, past, errors or past failures. They're focused on moving forward.
For sure. Well, look, I am looking forward to going through this football season with you guys. I really appreciate you being a part of the Locked On UConn Football Friday. I hope we can continue to do this. We just got a 2-part episode for us to kind of really get people. I feel like we did a good enough job tonight to give people an in-depth look. If they haven't enjoyed your podcast yet, or they haven't really done a deep dive into UConn football, I think we did a pretty good job of giving them a roadmap of what to expect come August 31st against Maryland, and then beyond, obviously, into the season. So before we go, just want to remind everybody, follow everybody that you see, and we're going to get better titles on here, but I'm at Mark Zanetto CBB. Make sure you follow the TNT College Football Podcast. Pete's at Pete Callan 33. Subscribe to Locked On UConn. Let's get you those home tickets against Merrimack on September 7th. You get a parking pass, the whole deal. And we'll probably have some other giveaways as time goes on. Guys, you got any parting shots before we sign off?
I'll just go ahead and add that Pete and I do a show every week, like we've been talking about, the TNT part of the TNT College Football Podcast. I'm a national podcaster. I do national media work. I vote on all the awards besides the Heisman. So I do a lot of national work, but I have a passion for UConn Husky football. And Pete and I, every Sunday night, sometimes Mondays, we do a 45-minute to hour-long deep dive into UConn Husky football. So feel free, everyone, to listen to that on Spotify. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, now you're going to be on all kinds of stuff now because we go out to Apple, Spotify.
Yep.
We're gonna hook it iHeartRadio, the whole deal, YouTube. What about you, Pete? What do you got to say?
I just wanted to second Bobby and the plug for the show. I think we provide a very good podcast, very thorough podcast on UConn football. Hopefully, you can see the passion that we put in to our observations and to the way we talk about our team. So please feel free to tune in to us. Feel free to tune in to Mark's show, obviously, and Locked On UConn. And, I'm an old fogey just trying to, make his way through the Twitter space. So I'll add in some insight every once in a while, but I don't want to sound like a dumbass. But anyway, just tune in. Bobby's one of the hardest working people in college football, doing his podcast, writing features and analysis on every single college football team. So give him a follow as well. He's a good read and a good listen.
Yeah, if you want to follow Bobby or in his personal, it's at Coach B at Coach_B Will. Give him a follow so we can get his numbers up as well. But guys, thank you so much. This is going to be, hopefully we continue this weekly and continue it throughout the season. I think, as you both know, I have a daughter on the way, so that'll happen during the season. So maybe you guys record a couple of shows on your own on the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see how it goes, right? And help me out in that respect, and we'll work that out. But I really appreciate this. I'm psyched about UConn football, and it's good to be on with you guys. And we're gonna close out the show by saying, guess what? Go Huskies!
Go Huskies! Bleed blue!